The baby had stopped breathing. 12 medical staff were packed shoulder to shoulder in the grand hall of the Thornton estate, their faces twisted with panic and helplessness. Black and white marble tiles were strewn with medical equipment. The monitor shrieked into the night. An ambulance still sat beyond the colossal iron gate, its lights flashing like something unhinged, cutting through the darkness at 2:47 in the morning. And in the center of that chaos, on a white blanket thrown hastily over the cold stone floor, a 6-month-old baby lay perfectly still. Her tiny lips had turned a bluish purple. Her small chest no longer rose. We tried everything. A female medic in a dark blue uniform lifted both hands in sheer despair. Mouth to mouth did not work. Oxygen did not work. Nothing is working. Her colleague, a man in the same uniform, shook his head as if he could not accept what his eyes were seeing. I have never seen a case like this in 20 years. The airway is completely clear. The heart is beating strong, but the baby will not breathe. Behind them, a doctor in green surgical scrubs and a white coat stared at the monitor, horrified. His stethoscope hung uselessly around his neck. "The vital signs are meaningless," he said, his voice trembling. "Everything is normal except that the baby is not breathing." As if her body forgot how to breathe, Damien Thornton dropped to his knees on the icy marble. At 36, he was the most powerful man in New York's underworld, the boss of the Thornton Empire, a name that made grown men tremble. His tailored black suit, still carrying the faint bite of gunpowder from the meeting he had just returned from, meant nothing now. Billions of dollars meant nothing. His shadow empire meant nothing. His little daughter was dying right in front of him. "Please," he begged, gripping the doctor's coat with hands that had ended more lives than he could count. "Please save her. I will give you anything. Everything I have. Just save my daughter." His voice broke, the voice that had commanded hundreds of men, that had negotiated with senators and silenced enemies, shattered like glass. Damien Thornton, infamous, the man with no weakness, had finally found his weakness. And the baby girl, only 6 months old, lying on the cold stone, was slipping away from him. There was no wife beside him. Victoria had left when Emma was only 2 months old, saying she refused to be tied down by a child. So Damien stood there alone, a single father, a crime lord, a man who controlled half of New York, yet could not control this, could not stop death from reaching for the only person he truly loved. "Do something!" he roared, and even the medical team flinched and backed away. Why is nobody doing anything? But no one knew what to do. 12 medical professionals, decades of training between them, millions of dollars in equipment, and none of it could save baby Emma. Each second dragged by like an hour. The bluish purple on her lips deepened. Then something unexpected happened. A young woman in a simple black and white nanny uniform pushed through the crowd. She was 27, olive-skinned, with dark brown hair tied neatly back. Her face was calm, but hard with determination. She was the new nanny, hired only 1 week ago. Most people in the room did not even know her name. "Excuse me," she said sharply. "Let me through." Marcus Cole, Damien's head of security, blocked her path. His massive body filled the space in front of her. "Ma'am, this is a medical emergency. You need to step back. I think I know what's wrong with the baby." Her voice stayed level, strangely certain. "Please, let me try." "No. They've run every test. They've tried every protocol. There is no way. Please." Her dark eyes brimmed with tears. "I have seen this before. Back in my village in New Mexico, my grandmother treated cases like this. Just give me 30 seconds. Something in her voice made Marcus hesitate. He turned to Damien. His boss's gray eyes, usually cold as steel, were now desperate, wild. "Let her through," Damien ordered. "For God's sake, let her try anything." The medics parted. The young woman dropped to her knees beside Emma on the cold marble. She studied the baby's face, watched the tiny fingers, tracked the stillness of the chest. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone who had done this before, of someone trained by something older than medical school. Then she did something that made everyone in the room stare. She picked up a blue plastic cup from the scattered equipment, filled it with cold water, and gently poured it over the baby's face. "What are you doing?" The doctor lunged forward. "You'll hurt her." The medics rushed in to stop her. Marcus, on instinct, moved his hand toward his gun, not sure whether this woman was trying to save Emma or harm her. Damien's eyes went wide with horror and fury. But before anyone could lay a hand on her, the miracle happened. Emma coughed. Her tiny body jolted. Water ran from her small mouth. And then, For the first time in 4 terrifying minutes, she drew in a breath, a beautiful, ragged breath that carried life back into her. Then another, and another. The room fell into complete silence. They stared at the baby, then at the nanny, then back at the baby. Pink began to return to Emma's cheeks. Her little fists twitched, weak but real. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing a steel gray that matched her father's exactly. And then she began to cry. The most beautiful sound anyone in that room had ever heard. How the doctor in the white coat stepped closer, his voice barely more than a whisper. "How did you know to do that?" The nanny looked up at him, tears sliding down her cheeks. "My grandmother taught me," she said softly. "It's an old remedy. Sometimes, with certain conditions, a baby's body forgets how to breathe. Cold water shocks the system. It reminds the body. That isn't in any medical textbook I've ever read." "Yes," the nanny said. "It isn't in books. It's in the heart, passed from grandmother to mother, from mother to daughter, through generations." Damien Thornton collapsed beside his daughter. The crime boss, the killer, the man who had never shown weakness to anyone, sobbed openly as he gathered Emma into his arms. He held her tight, as if he would never let go again. His whole body shook, and for the first time in his life, he did not care who saw him cry. Marcus watched the nanny with a mix of shock and suspicion. How could this young woman, with no medical degree, no modern equipment, no connection to their world, do what 12 trained professionals could not? Who was she, really? But before anyone could ask, before the nanny could explain her grandmother's wisdom or the traditions of a small village in New Mexico, something else happened. The doctor in the white coat frowned at his tablet. "Wait," he said slowly. "I just received the lab results from the preliminary scans." He looked up, his face tight with worry. "Something else is going on here. Something we missed." "What do you mean?" Damien's voice was raw from crying. "What did you miss?" The doctor hesitated. His eyes moved from the baby to the crime lord, and for a moment fear crossed his face. Delivering bad news to Damien Thornton was not something anyone did lightly. "I think we need to get Emma to the hospital immediately," he finally said. He looked at the nanny with a new respect and a new unease. "You just saved her life. But I don't think this is over." He paused. "I think it will happen again." Damien tightened his hold around his daughter, his jaw set. The softness of a grieving father disappeared, replaced by the cold calculation of a man who ruled by fear. He looked at the nanny, his gray eyes crowded with feelings he could not name. Gratitude, suspicion, and something else. Something far more dangerous. Who was this girl who had just saved his daughter's life? If this story gave you goosebumps, press the like button and share it with someone who needs a story about miracles. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part, because believe me, you are not ready for the secrets Olivia is about to uncover. The helicopter tore through the night sky like a black blade. Its rotors howled on the roof of the Thornton estate as the medical team hurriedly lifted baby Emma onto the gurney. Damien stayed right behind them, his bloodshot eyes never leaving his daughter for even a second. His expensive suit was now rumpled, stained with dried blood at the knees from where he had knelt on the marble floor, yet he did not seem to notice. Nothing existed except that small life, lying motionless on the white stretcher. "Get on," Damien said to Olivia without turning around, his voice a command that did not allow discussion. Marcus stood by the helicopter door, eyes wide with disbelief. In 8 years working for Damien Thornton, he had never seen his boss allow anyone outside his most trusted circle to come this close in a crisis. Yet this nameless nanny, hired less than a week ago, was now climbing into the private helicopter of the most powerful Mafia boss in New York, as if she belonged there. Olivia said nothing. She stepped into the cabin, sat beside Emma's gurney, and placed her hand over the tiny chest that rose and fell in a weak flutter. "The breathing is still there, she told herself, like a prayer. The helicopter lifted off. Manhattan slipped away below them, becoming a sea of glittering lights. Damien sat across from her, his face swallowed by shadow, with only his gray eyes shining, the eyes of a predator in the dark. He watched Olivia closely, as if trying to read every thought inside her head. Who is this girl? Why does she know how to save my child? What does she want? 20 minutes later, they touched down on the roof of the most exclusive private hospital in the city. A medical team was already waiting, led by Dr. Jonathan Reed, a salt-and-pepper-haired man with a stern face. He had been the Thornton family's private physician for 10 years, one of the few people who knew what Damien truly did for a living, and the only man who could look him in the eye without trembling. But tonight, even Dr. Reed could not hide his worry. They rushed Emma into the pediatric emergency unit. Tests came in waves: blood, brain, heart, lungs, everything. Damien stood like a statue by the glass, watching his daughter covered in wires and tubes. Olivia stood a few steps behind him, silent, observing, waiting. An hour later, Dr. Reed stepped out with a folder in his hand and heaviness written across his face. "We found the problem," he said, his voice low and careful. Damien moved toward him. "Say it." "Emma has a syndrome called CCHS, short for congenital central hypoventilation syndrome." Dr. Reed paused and drew a slow breath. "It's also known as Ondine's curse." "What curse?" Damien snarled. "That is the folk name for the disease. In mythology, Ondine is a water nymph who curses her unfaithful lover that if he falls asleep, he will forget how to breathe and die." Dr. Reed looked Damien straight in the eyes. "Emma has that exact condition. Her brain does not send the automatic signal to breathe when she sleeps. Her body forgets how to breathe." Silence, thick and suffocating. "Can it be cured?" Damien's voice sounded strangled. Dr. Reed shook his head slowly. "There is no cure. CCHS is a rare inherited disorder that affects the autonomic nervous system. Right now, there are only two options. One is lifelong ventilator support, every night when she sleeps. The other is surgery to implant a diaphragm pacer, to stimulate the body to breathe." Damien slammed his fist down on the nearest table. The glass shattered under the force, blood seeping from cuts across his hand, but he did not flinch. "I do not care how much it costs. Fix her." Dr. Reed did not step back. "Money does not buy everything, Mr. Thornton." In a blink, Damien grabbed the doctor by the collar and yanked him close. Veins stood out at his temples, his gray eyes burning with the fury of a cornered animal. "Then find someone whose life is valuable enough to trade. Because if my daughter dies, I will burn this hospital down with everyone inside." Dr. Reed went pale. For the first time in 10 years, he was truly afraid. Threatening him won't save Emma. The voice cut through the room like a blade. Damien turned, startled. Olivia stood there, back straight, dark brown eyes fixed on him without an ounce of fear. Then she did what no one had ever dared to do. She laid a hand on Damien's arm and pulled him away. "Let him do his job," she said, calm but unyielding. "Emma needs you clear-headed, not in jail for assault." Damien stared at her, really looked at her for the first time. No one touched him without permission. No one ordered him around. No one dared. Yet this girl, this nameless nanny, had just done both without trembling. Slowly, one finger at a time, Damien released Dr. Reed, but his gaze remained ice-cold as he turned back to the doctor. "Continue." Dr. Reed adjusted his collar, struggling to regain composure. "Surgery for a diaphragm pacer. It is the best option for Emma. The success rate is about 70%. 70%, Damien repeated, the words grinding between his teeth. "That is the highest rate we can reach for a 6-month-old baby. The procedure will be done tomorrow morning, when the best surgical team is here." Dr. Reed hesitated. "But tonight, someone must stay with her all night. If Emma stops breathing again before surgery," he did not need to finish. Everyone understood. "I will do it," Olivia said, her voice as steady as if she had just offered to make a cup of tea. "I will stay awake and watch her all night." Damien turned to her, his brow tightening. "Why?" Olivia did not answer right away. She looked through the glass into the room, where Emma lay amid wires and machines, small and fragile like a petal that could wither at any moment. Her heart clenched. Another image rose over it. Another baby. Another hospital room. Blood and tears, and the sound of her own screaming. "Because she needs me," Olivia said at last, her voice light as breath. "And maybe I need her too." She did not know why she had volunteered, but something inside her whispered that this child needed her. The way, somehow, she needed this child as well. 3 months earlier, Olivia Reyes stood at the edge of a bridge, ready to die. The night wind of Albuquerque stung her face, whipping her tangled brown hair into a frantic halo. Below, the Rio Grande churned through the darkness, black as ink, black as nothingness, black as a promise of release. Olivia was 27, yet her eyes were hollow like someone who had lived through 100 years of suffering. Her olive skin looked drained beneath the sickly yellow streetlights. Her trembling hands clung to the freezing metal rail. She had nothing left to lose, nothing left to hold on to. Images slid through her mind like a film strip snapping and skipping. Tyler's fist, his face warped by rage, the punch driven straight into her stomach when she was 7 months pregnant. She remembered hitting the kitchen floor. She remembered pain tearing through her lower belly. She remembered blood, so much blood, spreading across the white tile like a stain that would never wash away. Then the wail of the ambulance, the blinding glare of the emergency room, the doctor's face, full of regret, as he spoke words she would never forget. "I'm sorry. The baby didn't make it. Her son. The son she had already named. The son she had dreamed about every night. Dead inside her because of the hands of his own father." Then came the courthouse, the divorce papers. Tyler disappearing before the police could arrive, leaving her with an empty apartment and debt stacked like bricks on her chest. She lost her job because she missed too many days. Lost friends because she no longer had the strength to pretend she was fine. Lost herself at the bottom of a bottle and in nights without sleep. A doctor told her she might never be able to carry a child again after the injury. Tyler had not only killed her baby, he had killed her future. Olivia climbed onto the bridge rail, her legs shaking as she tried to balance on the narrow strip of metal. The wind grew stronger, as if it meant to shove her forward, into the darkness waiting below. She closed her eyes. Just one more step, and it would be over. Her phone in her jacket pocket began to vibrate. She meant to ignore it. Who would call at 2 a.m? Who would still remember she existed? But it kept buzzing, relentless, stubborn, like a hand reaching out to pull her back from the edge. Finally, almost mechanically, she took it out and looked. A message from New Mexico General Hospital. "Rosa Martinez. Critical condition. Please come immediately. Nana Rosa." The woman who had raised her since she was 7, after her parents died in a car accident. The woman who taught her everything she knew about healing, about herbs, about the strength of hands, and the power of a loving heart. The only person left in this world who still cared whether she lived or died. Olivia stepped down from the rail. She ran. She ran like she had never run in her life. Through empty streets, through red light intersections, without breath, without thought, with only one idea drilling through her mind. Nana Rosa, get there in time. Get there in time. But when she burst into the hospital room, Nana Rosa was already lying there, small and fragile amid wires and machines. Her eyes were half closed, but when she heard footsteps, she opened them and smiled, the warmest smile in the world. The smile Olivia had grown up with, the smile she thought she would never see again. "I've been waiting for you, mija," she whispered, her voice thin as a breeze. Olivia dropped to her knees beside the bed, took the wrinkled hand in both of hers, and broke into tears she could not control. "I'm here, Nana. I'm here." Nana Rosa lifted her other hand, trembling, and brushed Olivia's face. "I know you're hurting, mija. I know you want to give up." Her eyes held Olivia's, deep and knowing, as if she could read every wound carved into her soul. "But you have to promise me one thing. Anything, Nana. Don't quit." Her voice suddenly strengthened, urgent, fierce. "Find the people who need you most. Use these hands, this heart, to heal them." She squeezed Olivia's hand. "The body knows how to heal itself, Mija. Your job is only to remind it." "I promise," Olivia whispered through tears. "I promise, Nana." Nana Rosa smiled, the peaceful smile of someone who had finished her work in this life. Then she closed her eyes. Her breathing grew lighter, lighter, until her chest no longer moved at all. The monitor sounded one long, steady, merciless tone that marked the end. Olivia did not know how long she sat there, holding Nana Rosa's hand, crying until she had no tears left to give. The funeral took place 3 days later, small and quiet, like Nana Rosa's own life. Only Olivia and a few elderly neighbors came. No family, no relatives. Olivia stood alone at the grave, watched the casket lowered into the earth, and felt emptier than she had ever felt before. After the service, Nana Rosa's lawyer found her with a small wooden box. "Mr. Martinez instructed me to give this to you after she passed." Olivia opened the box with shaking hands. Inside was an old leather-bound notebook, its yellowed pages crowded with handwritten notes, recording traditional remedies and healing methods Nana Rosa had learned from her mother, and her mother's mother, passed down through generations. Alongside the notebook was a letter and an old photograph. In the photograph were 2 people, a young man and a young woman, both in white coats, standing in front of a building with a laboratory sign. She did not recognize them. She unfolded the letter and recognized Nana Rosa's trembling handwriting. "Mija, by the time you read this, I will no longer be with you. There are things I have hidden from you for 20 years to protect you. But now you are old enough, strong enough, to know the truth. When you are ready, learn about your parents. They did not die in a car accident. There are things you need to know. There are people you need to find. I love you forever, Nana Rosa. Olivia stared at the letter, then at the photo, then back at the letter. Her parents did not die in an accident. Then how did they die? The questions spun through her mind like a storm, but she was too exhausted to chase answers. She folded the letter, placed it back in the box with the notebook and the photograph. Not yet. Not now. In the days that followed, Olivia wandered through Nana Rosa's small house like a ghost. She did not know what she was supposed to do, where she was supposed to go, how she was supposed to keep living. Then one morning, scrolling her phone without thinking, she saw a job posting. Nanny needed for a family in Manhattan, New York. Must have experience caring for infants and basic medical knowledge. High salary, room and board provided. New York. Thousands of miles from New Mexico, far from every painful memory. Far from the bridge where she had almost ended everything. Maybe this is where I'm meant to go, Olivia whispered, as if she were speaking to Nana Rosa somewhere above. Maybe this is how I find them, the people who need me most. She pressed apply, never knowing she was walking straight into the devil's den. 1 week earlier, the Thornton estate rose against the Manhattan skyline like a castle made of darkness. Olivia stood before a black iron gate, more than 3 meters tall, her throat dry, her heart pounding hard in her chest. She had seen luxury homes before, but never anything like this. The iron bars curled into intricate patterns that still felt threatening, like black spears poised to pierce anyone who dared to enter. Security cameras glinted everywhere, tracking her from every angle. Guards in black suits stood on either side of the gate, faces cold as ice, arms folded across their chests, eyes hidden behind black sunglasses even though the sky was overcast. This is not a house, Olivia whispered to herself. This is a fortress. She swallowed, tightened her grip on the strap of her bag, and walked toward the gate. One of the guards stopped her, asked her name and her purpose. She answered in a voice far calmer than she felt. He spoke into his radio, waited a few seconds, then nodded and let her through. The massive gate opened with a heavy hiss, like the jaws of a monster parting to swallow her whole. The stone driveway wound toward the estate through gardens trimmed so perfectly it felt unnatural. Not a single fallen leaf, not one blade of grass out of place. Everything controlled, arranged, ruled by an invisible hand with power. Olivia passed a white marble fountain, past angel statues with expressionless faces, past dark red roses the color of blood, and finally stopped before the enormous oak doors of the main house. The doors opened before she could knock. A butler in a proper black uniform led her through a grand hall of black and white marble, down corridors lined with old paintings and crystal chandeliers, up a spiral staircase, and finally to a closed wooden door. "Mr. Thornton is waiting for you inside," the butler said, then turned and left without another word. Olivia drew a deep breath and pushed the door open. The study was dark as a cave. Heavy red velvet curtains were drawn tight, blocking all light from outside. The only illumination came from a desk lamp, casting a weak golden circle onto a massive oak desk in the center of the room. And sitting behind it, half hidden in shadow, was the man she had come to meet, Damien Thornton. She had researched him before she came. The head of Thornton Industries, a business empire spanning everything from real estate to fine dining. That was what the newspapers wrote. But there were other rumors too, whispers in the dark, stories of a completely different empire, one built on blood and fear. Olivia did not know what was true. She only knew she needed this job, needed to get far from her past, needed a new beginning. He was 36, over 1 meter 80 tall, broad-shouldered, his body shaped like something carved from stone and shadow. His storm-gray eyes looked through her from across the room, unblinking, unreadable. A faint scar ran along his left cheek, a reminder of a violent past she did not dare imagine. He did not stand when she entered. He did not offer her a seat. He did not bother with polite greetings. He only watched as if he were dissecting her with his gaze, peeling back every layer, searching for weakness, deciding whether she was worth his time. "Why should I trust you with my daughter?" His voice was low and cold, without a trace of warmth. It was not a question. It was a test. Olivia had prepared for it. She had rehearsed her answers for the entire flight from New Mexico. Lines about her experience in pediatric nursing, lines about infant care, lines about professionalism and devotion. But standing under that winter storm gaze, every practiced sentence dissolved, and instead, the truth spilled out. "Because I have lost a child." Her voice trembled, but she did not stop. I will never let that happen to any other child. Silence. A long silence that stole the air from the room. Damien Thornton went still in his chair. For an instant, only an instant, the icy mask on his face cracked. Olivia saw something flash in those gray eyes. Something like pain, like understanding, like an old wound being touched. Then the mask returned, as quickly as it had vanished. You start tomorrow, he said, still cold, but something had shifted. Don't make me regret it. The butler led Olivia to the nursery. The room was pale pink, decorated with fairy tale paintings and white lace curtains, luxurious down to the smallest detail. Yet something in the air felt cold, missing warmth, missing the love a child's room should hold. Then she saw the baby. Emma lay in a white crib, 6 months old, small and perfect. Her black hair was smooth as silk, just like her father's. Her gray eyes shone like gemstones, just like her father's. But when she looked at Olivia, when her gaze met Olivia's, there was no coldness there, only innocent curiosity, and a gummy smile blooming on her tiny lips. Olivia stepped to the crib, and her heart melted. She reached out, trembling, frightened, as if Emma were a dream that would vanish if she touched her. But Emma's little hand lifted, fingers like petals, and closed around Olivia's finger, squeezing tight. Emma laughed, a clear sound like bells, and looked at Olivia with absolute trust. Olivia's tears fell onto Emma's hand. She cried for the son she had lost, cried for the long nights she had held a pillow instead of a child, cried for everything that should have been hers, stolen with cruelty. Yet inside those painful tears, something new began to grow, a seed of hope, an invisible thread tying her to the small life, holding her finger as if it never wanted to let go. Standing in the doorway, Damien Thornton watched in silence. He had meant to turn away. He did not need to see more. She was only a nanny, like the ones before her, who would come and go once they could no longer stand the air of this house. But something made him pause. Maybe it was the way she looked at Emma. Maybe it was the quiet tears on her cheeks. Maybe it was the way Emma smiled at her, a smile the baby rarely gave anyone, not even him. For the first time in a long time, Damien's eyes softened, just slightly. Maybe I didn't make a mistake, he whispered to himself, then turned and walked away, his footsteps soundless on the marble. In that moment, Olivia knew she would protect this child with her life, no matter what secrets this house was hiding. It took Olivia 3 days to realize she was living in the house of a monster. The first day passed in a haze of awe and adjustment. She settled into a private room more luxurious than anywhere she had ever stayed. She memorized Emma's schedule, feeding times, naps, baths. She met the household staff, polite but distant, people who answered her questions with short, clipped sentences and lowered their heads whenever Damien Thornton walked by. Olivia assumed they were simply afraid of a demanding employer. She was wrong. On the second day, the signs began to show. At 3 a.m, Olivia woke to sounds in the hallway. She cracked her door open and saw Damien coming in, Marcus and 2 other guards behind him. His black suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, and on the cuff of his white shirt, just below the wrist, there were dark red streaks. Blood. Not his blood, because he walked steadily, uninjured. Not a mark on him. Someone else's blood. Olivia retreated into her room, her heart pounding like a war drum. On the 3rd day, she started to listen. Late-night phone calls carried through the door of Damien's office. Make sure he disappears. No witnesses. The shipment hits the port on Thursday. Make sure nobody checks it. If he can't pay, cut off fingers until he remembers where the money is. The words were calm, as if they were discussing the weather, yet every sentence smelled of death. Olivia began to notice small details she had overlooked. Marcus wore a gun at his hip even inside the house. Guards stood watch 24 hours a day at every entrance. The servants never met Damien's eyes. Their heads stayed bowed, shoulders hunched, as if bracing for a blow at any moment. This was not respect. This was pure fear. Late that 3rd afternoon, passing Damien's office to get fresh towels for Emma, Olivia heard a meeting underway inside. She did not mean to eavesdrop. She only slowed a little. Then a little more. The East Territory is being encroached on by Kozlov, Marcus said, his voice tight. We need to respond. Take out 2 of his distribution points, Damien said, his voice cold as ice. Leave a message. Anyone who touches my territory will pay. Understood, boss. And the shipment this week? Reroute it to the backup line. I don't want the FBI catching a scent. Olivia walked faster, trying to control the breath that had gone thin and sharp. Shipment. Territory. Take out. FBI. Oh God, she whispered when she reached her room, both hands gripping the side of Emma's crib. He isn't a businessman. He is. She could not finish the thought, could not give it a name, but the truth was as clear as daylight. Damien Thornton was a mafia boss. She was living in a criminal den. The daughter she cared for belonged to a killer. That night, Olivia packed. She shoved clothes into her bag with shaking hands, her mind spinning with a million questions. She had to go. Right now. Before anyone realized she knew too much. Before she became one of the people who disappeared with no witnesses. She lifted the bag, slipped her door open, and stepped into the dark hallway. The escape route ran behind the kitchen, a path she had memorized on the first day. All she had to do was pass Emma's room, go down the stairs, cross the kitchen, and she would be free. But as she reached Emma's door, she stopped. The nursery door was cracked open. A weak yellow nightlight spilled into the hallway. And inside, standing beside the white crib, was Damien Thornton. He did not know anyone was watching. He leaned over the crib, a large hand, a hand strong enough to crush a grown man's throat, stroking his daughter's smooth black hair with a gentleness that did not make sense. The face Olivia had come to know as ice, melted in the shadows. Pain, loneliness, and love. A love so absolute, so fierce, it made Olivia's throat tighten. "I'm sorry, Princess," Damien whispered, rough and trembling. "I'm sorry you have a monster for a father." He bent down, kissed Emma's forehead, then stood there a long time, watching her sleep, as if this was the only thing that meant anything in his blood-soaked life. Olivia stepped back, blending into the darkness. Monsters do not love like that. Monsters do not look at their children with eyes like that. Monsters do not apologize to a baby for what they are. She returned to her room, set her bag down, and never spoke of running again. On the 4th and 5th days, Olivia began to notice something else. Something even more alarming than Damien Thornton's darkness. Emma had strange moments in her sleep, moments when her tiny chest stopped. No rise, no fall, as if her body forgot how to breathe. Only a few seconds. Then she would breathe again, but those few seconds were enough to keep Olivia awake all night. She told Dr. Reed when he came for a routine visit. He gave a small smile and patted her shoulder as if soothing a child. "That's normal in infants. You're worrying too much." She told Damien when he stopped by Emma's room in the evening. He looked at her with the familiar coldness. "The doctor says she's fine. Know your place." Olivia swallowed the hurt. Who was she to challenge a doctor and her employer? She was only a new nanny, not even a week in the house, but her intuition, the instinct Nana Rosa had sharpened for 20 years, was screaming that something was wrong. She began staying up at night to watch Emma. Each time the baby stopped breathing, Olivia wrote it down. The time, the duration, the frequency. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds, longer each day, more often each day. On the 7th night, at 2:47 in the morning, Olivia sat beside Emma's crib, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, when she noticed the silence. Not the normal quiet of sleep, a dead silence. Emma's chest did not move. Her lips were turning bluish-purple, and this time, she did not start breathing again. Everything Olivia had feared was becoming real, but everything she had hoped for was about to begin. The hospital room was cold and sterile. But Olivia did not leave Emma's side for a single step. 6 hours before the surgery. 6 hours that stretched like an entire century inside the pediatric intensive care unit, under pale fluorescent lights and the steady monitor tones that sounded like the heartbeat of death waiting nearby. Olivia sat on a hard plastic chair beside the bed, her hand wrapped tightly around Emma's tiny hand, her fingers covering those petal small fingers completely. Her eyes burned from sleeplessness, but she did not dare close them, not even for a second. Every time she blinked, she feared that when she opened them again, the baby's chest would have stopped moving. The heart monitor sounded steadily. Beep, beep, beep. That monotonous rhythm should have comforted her, but it only tightened the knot inside her, because she knew that sound could stop at any moment, without warning, without mercy. Olivia began to sing. Softly, in a whisper, ancient melodies Nana Rosa used to sing to her every night when she was little. A song about stars keeping watch over a child's sleep. A song about angels sheltering the innocent. A song about love that walks through darkness and does not turn back. Her voice trembled, broke on the higher notes, but she did not stop, because this was all she could do. This was the only way she knew to fight death. As she sang, her hands moved gently over Emma's hand and arm, massage motions she had learned from Nana Rosa, old techniques meant to stir circulation and soothe the nervous system. Olivia did not know if it helped. She only knew she had to do something. Anything, instead of sitting there powerless and waiting. At 3 a.m, the door opened. Olivia looked up and saw Damien Thornton step inside. He was still in the same black suit from hours earlier, wrinkled and disordered. The tie was gone, the shirt collar pulled open. His black hair, usually combed into place, was a mess, as if he had dragged his hands through it 100 times. His gray eyes were ringed with dark shadows, bloodshot, threaded with veins like a map of nights without sleep. "You have not slept," he said, his voice hoarse. "It was not a question. Neither have you," Olivia answered without looking up, her gaze still fixed on Emma. Silence. A heavy silence stretched between them, but it was not uncomfortable, not sharp the way it had been before. It was simply two exhausted people, two shattered souls, keeping vigil over a small life balanced on the line between living and dying. Damien pulled up a chair and sat across from Olivia, on the other side of Emma's bed. He looked at his daughter. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes softened, melted into something Olivia could only call pure pain. "Victoria left when Emma was 2 months old," he began, his voice even, as if he were telling someone else's story. "She said a baby was inconvenient for her lifestyle." Olivia said nothing. She only listened, because she understood this was what he needed, not comfort, not judgment, just a pair of ears, willing to hold the truth. "I thought I could give Emma everything," Damien continued, still looking at the baby. "Money, security, the best things in the world, but I cannot give her a mother." "She has you," Olivia said quietly, finally lifting her eyes to him. "That is more than some children ever get." Damien looked at her, the familiar sharpness in his gaze, but this time there was something else. A crack in the ice armor, a faint, unexpected spark of real curiosity. "You said you lost a child," he said. "What happened?" Olivia went still. The question was a blade pushed straight into a wound that had never truly closed. She could refuse. She could say it was private. Who was he to demand her pain? He was a mafia boss, a killer, a monster. But he was also a father sitting here at 3 a.m, guarding the sleep of his fragile daughter, his eyes filled with fears he never let anyone see. "My husband," Olivia began, her voice shaking slightly. "Tyler. He hit me." She paused, drew a deep breath. "I was 7 months pregnant. One night he was drunk, angry about something I cannot even remember now. He punched me in the stomach." She looked down at Emma's hand in hers. "My son died inside me. The doctors said I might never be able to get pregnant again." Silence. A long silence that made it hard to breathe. When Olivia looked up, Damien's face had changed completely. The coldness was gone. The blankness was gone. In its place was a dark, primal rage, boiling under the surface like a volcano about to erupt. His gray eyes had turned storm dark. His jaw was clenched so tight the tendons stood out. His hand curled into a fist, white at the knuckles. "If I find him," Damien said, his voice icy and full of promised death, "I will kill him." Olivia looked at him, and strangely, she was not afraid. She knew he meant it. She knew he could do it. But instead of terror, something warm spread through her chest, something she did not recognize at first. How long had it been since anyone had been angry for her pain? How long since anyone had wanted to protect her? "He is not worth your time," she said softly. "Or your soul." Damien studied her, his expression complicated, crowded with feelings she could not fully read. Then he did something she did not expect. He reached across the bed and took her hand. Not rough, not demanding, just gentle, warm, like a promise that did not need words. "You survived hell," he said, his voice dropping lower. "That takes more strength than anything I have ever done." Olivia looked at him, and for the first time, she saw the human being behind the monster's shell. Not the cold mafia boss, not the ruthless killer, but a lonely, wounded man, trying to love his daughter in the only way he knew how. They sat there, hand in hand, watching over Emma until dawn slipped through the edge of the curtain and stained the white cold room with warm gold. The door opened. Dr. Reed walked in, followed by the surgical team in green. "It is time," he said, solemn. Damien and Olivia stood together beside the rolling crib where Emma slept, small and fragile among wires and machines. "She will make it," Olivia said, not sure if she was speaking to Damien or to herself. She is a fighter. Like her father. Damien turned to look at her, and in those gray eyes, something shifted. A wall came down. A door cracked open. A possibility he had never allowed himself to imagine. He had never trusted anyone, but something about this woman made him want to try. The surgery lasted 4 hours. 4 hours of hell on earth. Damien paced the waiting room like a wild predator trapped in a cage. His footsteps struck the hospital floor in a hard, steady rhythm. Each step was a curse. Each step was a silent prayer. He did not know how to pray. He had abandoned God the day his mother died in a pool of blood under his stepfather's hands. But today, for the first time in 20 years, he found himself whispering pleas to some higher power, any power at all, as long as it would spare his daughter. Olivia sat on a plastic chair in the corner, motionless as a statue, but if you looked closely, you could see her hands clenched together in her lap, knuckles white with strain. Her lips moved with prayers in Spanish, prayers Nana Rosa had taught her when she was small, prayers she thought she had forgotten, now pouring out of her like spring water. Outside the waiting room, Marcus stood guard with his back to the wall, but he was not relaxed. His phone buzzed without stopping. Messages and calls poured in, one after another. Each vibration tightened his face a little more. Each buzz darkened his eyes a little more. Something was happening. Something bad. 1 hour. 2 hours. 3 hours. 4. The operating room doors swung open. Dr. Reed stepped out, still in green surgical scrubs, cap on his head, mask pulled down under his chin. His face was exhausted, but his eyes held something that looked like relief. "She made it," he said, and the whole room seemed to brighten. "The pacer is working perfectly. Emma is a little warrior." Damien stood frozen, as if he could not believe what he had just heard. Then, suddenly, his legs gave out. He dropped into the nearest chair, covered his face with both hands, and his shoulders shook. The sound that escaped him was not exactly a sob. It was something more primitive, like the groan of a beast finally released from pain. Olivia cried too. Quiet tears slid down her cheeks, but her mouth held a smile, the first smile in days that had felt endless. She rose, stepped to Dr. Reed, and took his hand. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Damien lifted his head, eyes red, and did something he probably had not done in years. He said thank you to someone, and he meant it. "Thank you, doctor," he said, his voice rough, broken. Then he turned to Olivia. Gray eyes met brown. And in that moment, every wall between them seemed to fall away. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." Olivia started to speak. She meant to say she had done nothing, that the doctors were the ones who saved Emma, that she was only an anonymous nanny, but she did not get the chance. The waiting room door burst open. Marcus rushed in, pale as paper, eyes wide with panic. "Boss, we have a problem." Damien shot to his feet, the survival instincts of the underworld snapping awake in him. "What?" Marcus did not answer. He only held out his phone. Olivia watched Damien's face change as he read the screen. Blood drained from his skin. Then it surged back, red as flame. His gray eyes darkened, turning storm black. His jaw clenched so hard she could hear his teeth grind. And in that instant, she saw the monster. Not the grieving father. Not the man whose hand she had held through the night. The Mafia boss. The killer. The nightmare that made enemies tremble. "Son of a bitch!" Damien roared and hurled the phone into the wall. It exploded into fragments, plastic and glass spraying in every direction. "Kozlov." He spat the name like a curse. It was Kozlov. "Boss, he's got someone inside this hospital," Marcus said, his voice stretched tight as wire. "The photo was taken through the glass of Emma's room less than 10 minutes ago." "Lock it down," Damien ordered, his voice cold as ice, sharp as a blade. "I want 20 men on this hospital, now. No one in, no one out without my approval. Find the one who took that picture and bring him to me, alive." Marcus nodded and disappeared through the door, phone already pressed to his ear, launching into a storm of calls. Olivia stood there, frozen, her heart pounding like a war drum. She had seen Damien cold, she had seen Damien broken, but she had never seen him like this. This was the Mafia boss in his truest shape, command, threat. Violence coiled inside every word, and for the first time, she was truly afraid. "What is happening?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Who is Kozlov?" Damien turned toward her, and for a moment he seemed to forget she was even there. His eyes were distant, icy, as if she were only an obstacle in his path. "He is the man who wants to destroy everything I have," Damien said, and there was no warmth left in his voice. And now he knows about Emma. A heavy silence settled. You should leave, Damien said, not looking at her. This is not your war. Olivia looked through the glass into the recovery room. Emma lay there, small among machines, sleeping after surgery, unaware that somewhere out there a man wanted to harm her. Olivia's chest tightened. She thought of the son she had lost. She thought of the promise she had made to herself, that she would never let that happen to another child. I am not going anywhere, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. I do not care who is coming. Damien looked at her as if she had grown a second head. You do not understand what you are saying. Then make me understand, Olivia said, lifting her chin. Tell me everything. Damien fell silent, his gray eyes searching her face. He had never trusted anyone with the truth. Truth was the most dangerous weapon, and he did not hand weapons to anyone, but this woman had saved his daughter. She had stayed when anyone else would have run. She had held his hand through the long night in the hospital without asking for anything. All right, he said at last, his voice dropping low. But once you know, there is no going back. Olivia had asked for the truth. She did not know the truth would change everything. The truth came out in pieces, like shattered glass. Damien led Olivia into a private room at the far end of the hospital corridor, away from curious eyes and listening ears. He shut the door, drew the curtain, then stood there for a long moment with his back to her, as if gathering the courage to do what he had never done with anyone. Tell the truth. I was born in Brooklyn, he began, his voice low and steady. Not the trendy Brooklyn people see today with hipster coffee shops and million-dollar apartments. Brooklyn in the 1980s. The slums. The place where people killed each other over a few dollars of drug money. Olivia sat in the chair across from him and listened. My mother was a young, foolish girl who loved the wrong man. My biological father disappeared before I was even born. Then my mother met Frank. Damien spat the name as if it tasted bitter. My stepfather, a violent drunk with fists like sledgehammers. He turned, and Olivia saw the faint scar along his left cheek look darker in the dim light. He beat my mother. He beat me. Every night he drank. I grew up with the taste of blood in my mouth and the sound of breaking bones in my ears. Damien's voice held no emotion, as if he were telling someone else's story. When I was 12, one night he went too far with my mother. She fell, hit her head on the corner of the table, and died right there. Olivia drew in a sharp breath. She wanted to say something, but she could not find words that fit. I ran out that night, 12 years old. No money, no family, no future. Damien moved to the window and looked out at the Manhattan night. I lived on the streets. I stole to survive. I fought to stay alive. And I learned a lesson no school teaches. In my world, you are either the predator or the prey. He turned back, gray eyes hard as steel. I chose to be the predator. A heavy silence stretched between them. I built the Thornton empire from nothing, Damien continued. From a street kid to a boss. I have done things that would make you run if you really knew. I have killed people who deserved it. He paused and took a breath, and people who maybe did not. Olivia said nothing. She only watched him, face unreadable, dark brown eyes, giving away nothing of what was moving through her mind. Viktor Kozlov, Damien said, spitting the name. A Russian Mafia boss. He controls the entire East Coast, everything from drugs to trafficking to money laundering. He has wanted my territory for a long time, but he never found an opening. Damien's eyes darkened. Until now. He found my weakness. He looked toward Emma's room, where she slept after surgery. Emma. Silence again. Olivia sat still, swallowing each piece of information like bitter medicine. She had suspected. She had known. But hearing it confirmed from his own mouth was something else entirely. Say something, Damien said, tension in every word. Curse me out. Scream. Call the police. Do something. Olivia lifted her head and looked straight into his eyes. You are a killer, she said, her voice flat as still water. Yes, you have hurt other people. Yes, and you think I will stay. Damien let out a bitter laugh with no humor in it. No, I think you will run. Everyone runs. Olivia stood up. Damien watched her, certain this was the moment she would walk out that door and never come back, like everyone else, like Victoria, like anyone who ever got close enough to see the real monster inside him. But Olivia did not go to the door. She went to the window and stood beside him, looking out at the Manhattan night, millions of lights glittering like stars fallen to earth. My husband beat me until I lost my baby, she said, her voice light as breath. The law did not protect me. The police did not care. I had to protect myself. She turned to face Damien, brown eyes meeting gray. I do not have the luxury of judging how other people survive, she said. But I need to know one thing. What? If I stay, will you protect Emma? Really protect her? Not just with guns and money, but with your life. Damien looked at her, and for a moment the cold mask vanished completely. What remained was only a father, only a man, with the purest and most primal kind of love. I will burn the whole world for her. Olivia nodded, as if that was the only answer she needed. Then I will stay, she said. For Emma, not for you. Damien stared at her, and something shifted in his eyes. Not gratitude, not desire. Something he had never given anyone but Emma. Respect. You are either the bravest woman I have ever met, Damien said, or the stupidest. Olivia gave a faint smile, the first smile of this conversation. Maybe I am both. She had made her choice. Now she would have to live with it. They came 3 days later, at the deepest hour of night. The Thornton estate lay in darkness and a false kind of peace. The clock read 2 a.m, the time when night feels thickest, when the border between nightmare and reality blurs until you can hardly tell them apart. Emma slept soundly in her white crib. The diaphragm pacer ran steadily. Her tiny chest rose and fell in a calm rhythm, breathing supported by the machine. The surgery had worked. She had been home for 3 days. Everything seemed as if it was finally going to be all right. Olivia sat in the adjoining room with a book open in her lap, though her eyes were not truly reading. She could not sleep. Not only because she worried about Emma, though that was part of it. She could not sleep because she knew something was coming. She felt it in the air, in the tension of the guards pacing the hallway, in the worry Damien tried to hide each time he looked at his daughter. Kozlov was not a man who made empty threats, and he would not wait forever. Downstairs in the study, Damien was meeting with Marcus and the core security team. 30 guards were deployed around the estate. The cameras had been upgraded with night vision. Every entry and exit was locked down. Defensive plans were drawn. Escape routes were prepared. Kozlov won't hit us head on, Marcus said, tapping the estate map on the table. He's not stupid. He's not stupid, Damien agreed, his voice low as thunder. But he's arrogant. And arrogance makes people careless. Damien was wrong. Kozlov was not making a mistake. He was creating one for someone else. The lights went out. The entire estate dropped into sudden darkness, as if someone had wrapped a hand around every source of light and crushed it. This was not an ordinary power outage. There was no sound of backup generators kicking on. This was deliberate. This was an attack. Then the gunfire started. Automatic bursts tore through the night from every direction, rolling and echoing like thunder. Screams, footsteps, shattering glass, bodies hitting the ground. The Thornton estate, the fortress that was supposed to be untouchable, was under assault. Olivia sprang up as if launched by a spring, the book sliding off her lap and thudding to the floor. Darkness swallowed everything. She could see nothing but the brief flashes of gun muzzles outside the window. Instinct snapped into place. Emma. Get to Emma. Olivia ran into the hallway and slammed straight into a massive figure. Marcus. Safe room. Now, he shouted, his voice raw with strain. No explanation. No time. Olivia rushed into Emma's room, lifted the baby from the crib in a single movement. Emma screamed, terrified by the noise and the darkness. Olivia pressed Emma hard against her chest, shielded the tiny head with her hand, and ran after Marcus down the hall. Bullets hissed past above her. She heard them punch into the wall, inches from her face. A guard running ahead suddenly jerked backward and collapsed right in front of her. His eyes stared up at the ceiling, unblinking. A dark red flower bloomed across his chest. Blood sprayed the wall, the floor, even Olivia's clothes. She did not stop. She could not. Emma screamed in her arms, but Olivia had no time to soothe her. She ran like she had never run in her life, covering the baby with her own body. If a bullet came, it would go through her before it ever reached Emma. That was the only thing she could do. Marcus led the way, firing back into the darkness whenever he saw movement. They raced down the stairs, through a hidden corridor, to a steel door at least 30 centimeters thick. "In here!" Marcus yelled, swiping a card and pulling the door open. "Do not open this door for anyone except me or the boss. Do you understand? Anyone." Olivia stumbled into the safe room, and the steel door slammed shut behind her with a heavy boom, like a coffin lid closing. Outside, hell was burning. Damien moved through the darkness like a ghost. He knew this house the way a man knows his own hand. Every corner, every blind spot on the cameras, every perfect shadow to hide and strike. The gun in his grip was an extension of his arm, each shot finding its target with lethal precision. An attacker appeared at the end of the hall. Damien fired. The man dropped. 2 more charged out of the living room. 2 shots. 2 bodies. "This is my house," Damien roared into the darkness, his voice echoing like thunder. "My territory. My daughter." Each bullet was a declaration. Each enemy who fell was a warning. Damien Thornton was not prey to be hunted. He was the hunter. And anyone who forgot that would pay in blood. Inside the safe room, Olivia crouched in a corner. Emma held tight in her arms, rocking her with trembling lullabies. The gunfire outside thudded through the steel walls, muted but strong enough to make Olivia's heart pound like a drum. Emma had stopped crying, exhausted, and fell asleep in Olivia's arms, unaware that outside this room, people were killing each other because of her. 1 minute passed. 2. 5. The gunfire thinned. Olivia began to hope it was over. Then she heard it. A faint scraping sound from the vent above her head. Soft. Almost nothing. But Olivia heard it because she was listening to every sound with the focus of someone about to die. Someone was crawling through the ventilation shaft. Someone was coming. Olivia clutched Emma tighter and backed into the corner, eyes locked on the vent grate in the ceiling. Her heart slammed wildly. They were not safe. They were trapped. The vent cover fell with a clanging crash, and a man dropped into the room. He was huge, shoulders as wide as a door, dressed in black tactical gear from head to toe. A mask covered half his face, leaving only eyes exposed, cold and flat, like a snake's. In his hand was a pistol fitted with a suppressor, aimed straight at Olivia. Olivia backed into the corner, her spine pressed to the freezing steel wall. Emma held tight in her arms, her heart hammered wildly, blood rushing hot in her head. Yet strangely, her mind went clear, as if fear had crossed some final line and turned into something else entirely. Absolute focus. The assassin stepped closer, slow and confident. He was not in a hurry. He knew there was nowhere to go. The safe room had become a trap. "The boss wants the baby," he said, his voice low and cold through the mask. "Hand her over, and I will let you die fast." Olivia looked at him, then looked down at Emma screaming in her arms. The child was not her own by blood, but in this moment, it did not matter. Emma was the baby she had sworn to protect. Emma was why she stayed. Emma was everything. Nana Rosa's voice rose inside her head, clear as if the woman were standing right beside her. "When you have nothing left to lose, you become the most dangerous, Mija." Olivia had nothing left to lose. She had lost her son, lost her marriage, lost Nana Rosa, almost lost herself on that bridge in Albuquerque. Death was not frightening anymore. Only failure was frightening. Only letting Emma be harmed was frightening. "No," she said, her voice steady, her eyes locked on the killers. The assassin tilted his head, as if surprised by the resistance. Then he laughed, a cold sound that bounced off the sealed walls. "Then I will rip her from your cold hands." He raised the gun. His finger tightened on the trigger. In a heartbeat, Olivia remembered the nights Tyler beat her. She remembered the helplessness of lying on the floor, blood in her mouth, pain in every joint. She remembered the vow she made when she left the hospital after losing her baby. Never again a victim. She had learned self-defense, learned how to fight, learned how to turn fear into strength. A desk lamp sat on the shelf beside her. In one single motion, she swung her arm, grabbed the lamp, and hurled it straight at the assassin's face. He did not expect it. The lamp struck his head and made him stagger back. The shot went off, but the bullet flew wide, slamming into the steel wall only a few centimeters from Olivia's head. Olivia did not have time to be afraid. She set Emma down in the safest corner of the room, behind the metal cabinet, then turned back to face her enemy. The assassin had recovered. His eyes burned with rage. "You are dead, you son of a..." Olivia did not let him finish. She surged forward, using speed and surprise as her weapons. She was nearly half a meter shorter than him, at least 30 kilograms lighter, but she was faster, and she was more desperate. Her knee slammed into his knee, the weak point her self-defense instructor had taught her. He cried out and lost balance. Her elbow snapped up, driving straight into his nose. Blood burst out. He reeled. The gun fell from his hand, but he still did not go down. A man that big did not fall from one hit. He roared and threw a fist toward her. Olivia shifted aside, but it still grazed her shoulder. Pain tore through her, but she did not stop. She could not stop. Her eyes swept the room, searching for a weapon. a fire extinguisher, hanging on the wall right beside her. She yanked it down, heavy in her hands. The assassin charged at her, blood pouring from his nose down his chin, eyes red with fury. Olivia swung the fire extinguisher with every last ounce of strength and drove it straight into his temple, a dry cracking sound. He stood there for 1 second, eyes wide, then fell like a tree being cut down. His massive body hit the floor with a heavy slam, and then did not move. Olivia stood there, gasping, the fire extinguisher still in her hands, staring down at the unconscious assassin at her feet. Her whole body shook. Adrenaline surged through her veins. Her heart felt like it might split her chest open. The safe room door flew open with a metallic boom. Damien burst in, gun in hand, eyes wild as he searched. He froze the moment he saw the scene. Olivia stood in the middle of the room, hair in disarray, clothes smeared with blood, a fire extinguisher in her hands, standing over the motionless body of the assassin. Emma cried in the corner, but she was safe. You hit him?" Damien asked, his shock impossible to hide. Olivia lifted her head to meet his gaze. Her dark brown eyes burned with something wild and primal. "I told you," she said, her voice rough with exhaustion. "No one touches her." Damien looked at her the way he had never looked at anyone. Not like someone weak who needed protection, not like an obedient nanny, but like a fighter, an equal. "You are full of surprises, Miss Reyes," he said, something like a brief smile passing over his mouth. Then his body swayed, one hand grabbing the doorframe to keep himself upright. Olivia saw it immediately. Blood was spreading across his shoulder, dark under the emergency lights. "You are hurt," she said, dropping the fire extinguisher and moving toward him. "It is nothing," Damien replied, but his voice weakened. "Nothing," Olivia said, catching his arm and guiding him to a chair. "Sit down. Let me see." For the first time, Damien Thornton obeyed. The result of the attack was this: 8 attackers, 6 taken down, 2 captured alive, 4 Thornton guards killed. Damien wounded in the shoulder, blood loss but not life-threatening. Emma safe, because of Olivia. Something had changed between them. The walls were coming down. She cleaned his wound by candlelight, her hands steady even as her heart beat out of rhythm. The power still had not been restored after the attack. The Thornton estate sat in darkness, lit only by flickering candles in Damien's bedroom. 4 a.m. Outside, Marcus and the surviving guards were clearing the wreckage, moving bodies, interrogating the 2 men they had captured. Inside, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, the first aid kit open in front of her, tending the wound in Damien's shoulder. The bullet had passed through the muscle. In one side, out the other, missing an artery and bone. A clean wound, if any gunshot wound could ever be called clean. Olivia used the nursing skills she had learned during her time at the hospital, blended with what Nana Rosa had taught her about herbs and wound care. She rinsed it with antiseptic solution, applied antibiotic ointment, then wrapped it carefully in white gauze. "You were lucky," she said, her voice gentle but firm. 1 centimeter farther left and it would have hit an artery. You would have bled out before anyone could get to you. Damien watched her, gray eyes unfocused from blood loss and exhaustion, yet still lit by something strange. "Lucky," he murmured. "Or maybe someone is watching over me." He looked straight into her eyes as he said it. Not up at the ceiling, not toward Emma sleeping in the crib in the corner. At her, only her. Olivia swallowed and forced herself to focus on tying the bandage tight. The blood loss had weakened Damien's defenses. The cold mask he always wore had cracked, revealing the man underneath. Vulnerable, worn thin, lonely down to the bone. "If I lose Emma," he said, his voice low and breaking, "I have no reason to live." Olivia stopped, her hands still, and looked at him. "I built an empire," Damien went on, eyes fixed on emptiness, as if speaking to himself. "Killed for it, died inside 1,000 times for it, and for what?" He gave a bitter laugh with no humor in it. "So I could have a little girl who does not even know her father is a monster." "Emma knows you love her," Olivia said, her voice soft but certain. "That is all that matters." Damien lifted his head and looked at her with suspicion. "You think love is enough?" "It is everything," she said. And in that moment she thought of Nana Rosa, thought of the son she had lost, thought of all the long nights she had believed she would never be able to love or be loved again. Love is the only thing left when everything else has burned to ash. Silence stretched between them, but it was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of 2 souls feeling their way toward each other through rubble. Damien reached out and took Olivia's hand as she worked. She went still, but she did not pull away. "Why did you stay?" he asked, his voice rough. "Truly, you could have run. You should have run." Olivia looked into his eyes, storm gray. But deep inside, there was a fire. Not the fire of anger or violence, the fire of a man who wanted redemption and did not know how to ask for it. "Because I saw the man behind the monster," she whispered, "and he deserves to be saved." Damien stared at her, and something in him broke. Not in a terrible way, in the way a hard shell around a heart finally cracks. He pulled her closer, not violently, not roughly, but like a drowning man searching for his last breath. His lips met hers, light as a butterfly, then deeper, hungrier, more desperate. Olivia kissed him back, because she needed this too, needed to be saved, needed to be loved, needed to know that after all the pain, after all the loss, her heart could still feel something other than emptiness. The kiss lasted as if time had stopped, full of pain, full of longing, full of the broken pieces of two shattered souls trying to fit back together into something whole. When they finally parted, Damien rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. "I will destroy Kozlov," he said, a vow in his voice. "And then I will leave this life. For Emma. For you." Olivia looked at him, dark brown eyes filled with feelings she did not dare name. "Do not promise what you cannot keep. I have never broken a promise to anyone who mattered, and I matter." Damien lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "More than you know." They did not sleep together that night. Not yet. There were wounds that needed healing first, wounds of the body and wounds of the soul. But Olivia lay down beside Damien's bed, her hand holding his, gripping tight until he finally fell asleep. In the corner of the room, Emma slept peacefully in her crib, her steady breathing the gentlest music in the world. 3 people, a strange family in a world of darkness, a mafia boss with blood on his hands, a nanny with a broken heart, and a baby with a dangerous illness. For the first time in many years, Olivia felt something she thought she had lost forever: hope. The text came from an unknown number. "I know the truth about your parents. Meet me." 1 week had passed since the night of the attack. The Thornton estate had been repaired. Security had been doubled. Life seemed to be returning to normal, or at least the version of normal that existed inside a mafia household. Damien still carried pain in his shoulder, but he could move freely again. Emma was recovering well, the pacer running steady, and her clear, bright laughter had returned to the halls. And Olivia and Damien, they had not named what was forming between them, but it was there, in stolen looks, in brief brushes of hands. In the nights Olivia sat beside his bed until he fell asleep. Olivia was feeding Emma lunch when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, saw an unrecognized number, and started to ignore it. Then the message appeared, and her heart seemed to stop. "I know the truth about your parents. Meet me." She stared at the screen, her hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped the spoonful of cereal. Emma babbled, asking for more, but Olivia did not hear her. Her mind spun with frantic, chaotic thoughts. She typed a reply, fingers trembling over the keys. "Who is this?" The answer came immediately. "Someone who has been looking for you for 20 years. Please." "This is about how they really died." Olivia drew a slow breath, trying to force her heart into something like steadiness. Nana Rosa's letter rose in her mind, clear as if she were holding it again. They did not die in a car accident. For 20 years, Olivia had believed the story of the crash. For 20 years, she had mourned her parents without knowing the truth, and now someone was offering her answers. She looked at Emma, then she looked toward the window where guards paced their routes. She should tell Damien. That was the right thing to do. But then she thought, what if this is a trap? What if this is Kozlov trying to lure her out? Damien would go out of his mind. He would never let her go. And if this really was someone who knew about her parents, she did not want Damien interfering until she understood what was happening. "Where?" she typed. "Rosa Cafe, Brooklyn, 3 in the afternoon. Come alone." Olivia asked a housemaid to watch Emma during the lunch break, saying she needed to run out to buy a few things. She put on a coat, pulled a hat low to hide half her face, and slipped out of the estate through the back door. Crossing the courtyard, she caught Marcus's gaze. He stood near a car, speaking to another guard, but his eyes tracked her like a hawk watching prey. Olivia waited for him to stop her, waited for him to ask where she was going. But Marcus only watched her a long moment, then gave a small nod, as if he understood, as if he was granting her a chance he did not have to grant. She called a taxi and vanished into the Manhattan crowd. Rosa Cafe was a small place tucked into an alley in Brooklyn, the kind of spot people chose when they did not want to be seen. Olivia pushed the door open. A bell chimed above her. The cafe was nearly empty, only a few customers scattered across tables, and in the back corner, a woman was waiting. She looked about 55, black hair threaded with silver, a face shaped by weather and years, but still holding a quiet beauty from youth. But what stopped Olivia in place were the woman's eyes, dark brown, the same eyes Olivia saw every day in the mirror. "You look exactly like your mother," the woman said, her voice trembling with emotion. "My God, Maria, she looks just like you." Olivia stepped closer, her heart pounding. "Who are you?" The woman stood. Tears filled her eyes. "I am Isabel Reyes, your mother's sister, your aunt." Olivia shook her head and stepped back. "No, that is not possible. My mother was an only child. She did not have a sister." "That is what they told you," Isabel said, gentle but firm. "To protect you." She slid a thick envelope across the table. Inside were old photographs, yellowed with time. 2 young women standing together, grinning wide, their faces so similar it was shocking. A family of 4, a father, a mother, and 2 daughters. Then a birth certificate, letters, proof that could not be denied. Olivia sank into the chair as if her legs could no longer hold her. Why did I never know about you?" "Because after your parents died, Rosa hid you," Isabel said, sitting across from her. "She changed your last name, moved you to New Mexico, raised you as her own granddaughter. All of it was to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Isabel glanced around, as if afraid someone might be listening. Then she leaned forward, lowering her voice until it was almost a whisper. "Your parents, Dr. Daniel and Maria Reyes, were brilliant genetic scientists. They were working on a breakthrough treatment for a rare inherited disease. They did not die in a car accident, Olivia." Isabel's eyes hardened. "They were murdered." Olivia could not breathe. The world seemed to tilt. Everything she had known, everything she had believed, cracking into a million pieces. "Why?" Olivia whispered, her voice shaking. "Who killed them?" Isabel looked her straight in the eyes, and in eyes identical to Olivia's lived a deep, enduring fear, the kind that had haunted her for 20 years. "Have you ever heard of Helix Pharmaceuticals?" Olivia shook her head. "What about a man named Victor Kozlov?" The name hit Olivia like a bullet. Kozlov, the man who had attacked the Thornton estate, the man who wanted Emma dead, the man Damien had sworn to destroy, the man who had killed Olivia's parents. Everything Olivia had ever believed about her life was a lie. She sat there in the small Brooklyn cafe, listening as Aunt Isabel spoke, and each piece of the world she thought she understood broke apart, then rearranged itself into an entirely different picture, a darker picture, a more painful one, and yet one that carried more meaning than anything she had ever understood about herself. "Your parents, Daniel and Maria Reyes, were genetic geniuses," Isabel began, her voice low and unhurried, as if every word carried the weight of 20 years of silence. "They were not only good scientists, they were pioneers, people brave enough to dream about changing the world." She opened an old file and slid out photographs and documents. Olivia saw her parents in white lab coats, standing beside complicated laboratory equipment, smiling at each other as if they were holding the secret of the universe in their hands. "They were working on gene therapy for rare inherited diseases," Isabel continued, "especially a syndrome called CCHS, congenital central hypoventilation syndrome." Olivia's heart seemed to stop. CCHS, Emma's disease, Ondine's curse. "They were very close to a breakthrough," Isabel said, and her voice tightened. "A complete cure. No lifelong machines, no surgery, just a single gene treatment, and the child would be able to breathe normally, like everyone else." Olivia could barely believe what she was hearing. Her parents had been studying the exact disease Emma had, 20 years ago. "Then why does that treatment not exist?" Olivia asked, her voice shaking. "Why does Emma still have to live with a pacer?" Isabel let out a slow breath, bitterness plain on her face. "Helix Pharmaceuticals," she said, and the name left her mouth like a curse. "One of the largest pharmaceutical corporations in the world. They make billions of dollars every year from ventilators, medical devices, and maintenance treatments for chronic patients. If your parents' method succeeded, Helix would lose an enormous stream of profit." Olivia began to understand, and that understanding burned like acid, eating through the edges of her soul. "Helix approached your parents," Isabel continued. "They offered to buy the entire research project for an enormous amount of money, but not to develop it, to bury it, to make sure it never saw the light of day. And my parents refused, Olivia whispered, not really asking. Daniel told them. Isabel nodded, tears shining in her eyes. This cure belongs to every child, not to corporate profit. A heavy silence settled between them. Helix did not accept being refused, Isabel said, her voice hardening. They needed someone to solve the problem, someone who was not afraid to get his hands dirty, someone who did the things ordinary people never dared to do. Kozlov, Olivia whispered, the name tasting like poison. Victor Kozlov worked for Helix for years, Isabel said. He laundered money for them. He handled their dirty work. And 20 years ago, Helix paid Kozlov $50 million to make your parents disappear. Tears began to slide down Olivia's cheeks, and she did not bother to wipe them away. She only sat there, listening, feeling her heart break into a million pieces. He staged the car accident, Isabel went on, her voice trembling with rage that had been sealed up for too long. He made sure there were no survivors. But they did not know about you. Rosa hid you before it happened. She changed your name, moved you to New Mexico, raised you as her own granddaughter. She protected you for 20 years. Olivia thought of Nana Rosa, thought of the look in her eyes whenever Olivia asked about her parents. The pain she kept hidden, the caution, the evasive answers. It all made sense now. Nana Rosa knew, Olivia asked, her voice thick. All this time, she knew. She was protecting you, Isabel said softly. If they had known you existed, they would have killed you the way they killed your parents. But why now? Olivia asked, looking at her with red, swollen eyes. Why are you telling me now? Isabel reached into her handbag and pulled out an old notebook. The brown leather cover was worn smooth with age, the corners curled, but it was still intact. She set it on the table in front of Olivia. Because your father left this behind, she said. His research, nearly complete. Rosa kept it for 20 years, waiting for the right time. Olivia stared at the notebook. Her hand trembled as she touched the leather cover. And because, Isabel continued, her voice turning grave, the man threatening the child you care for is the same man who murdered your parents. This is not coincidence, Olivia. This is fate. Olivia sat there with the notebook in her hands, tears running down her face. Kozlov killed her parents. Kozlov was threatening Emma. Olivia had been hired to nanny the daughter of Kozlov's enemy. Everything connected, fitting together like pieces of a picture she never imagined existed. What am I supposed to do with all of this? Olivia asked, her voice sounding far away even to her. Isabel reached across the table, took Olivia's hand, and squeezed hard. Finish what your parents began. Save children like Emma, and make Kozlov pay. Olivia looked down at the notebook, her father's handwriting, her parents' legacy, and maybe, just maybe, the cure for the little girl she loved. She told him everything, and watched his world tilt down to the roots. The night was late. The Thornton estate lay in silence. Emma slept deeply in her crib, the pacer's steady rhythm releasing soft beeps, like a second heartbeat beneath her own. Olivia stood in Damien's study, the dark room with heavy red velvet curtains drawn tight, the room where she had first met him less than a month ago. But everything had changed. She had changed. He had changed. And what she was about to say would change everything again. She started at the beginning. The text from the unknown number, the meeting with Isabel, the truth that she had an aunt she had never known for 27 years, her parents, Dr. Daniel and Maria Reyes, brilliant scientists who had devoted their lives to finding a cure for CCHS, Helix Pharmaceuticals, and their sick greed, Kozlov and $50 million paid in blood. When she finished, she set the brown leather notebook on Damien's desk. The man trying to kill your daughter, she said, her voice trembling slightly but holding steady, is the same man who murdered my parents. Damien said nothing. He sat there, still as stone, gray eyes fixed on the notebook. Then, slowly, he reached out and turned the yellowed pages covered in handwriting, formulas, charts, scientific notes he did not understand, yet he knew they were worth more than gold. Silence stretched until it stole the air. When Damien finally lifted his head, his face had changed completely. His jaw was clenched so hard the muscle stood out like rope. His gray eyes had gone dark, black as a moonless night. It was not the explosive rage Olivia had seen before. It was colder, more dangerous. Anger compressed and refined into a lethal weapon. 20 years, he said, his voice low, hissing through his teeth. He was right there for 20 years, and I never knew. He rose and walked to the window, staring out into the Manhattan night. He stole your family, and now he is trying to steal mine. Olivia remained still, waiting. She knew Damien was processing it, reshaping everything in his mind, calculating. And she also knew what the next question would be. He turned back, his gray eyes cut straight through her. Did you know? Before you came here, Olivia held his gaze without flinching. No, I swear. I knew nothing until Isabel found me. What proof do you have? Nothing but my word. Tense silence stretched between them. Olivia felt as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for a verdict. If Damien did not believe her, everything would end. Not only whatever fragile bond had begun to form between them, but possibly her life. I believe you, Damien said at last. Olivia let out a breath, then still asked, why? Because you could have run, he said, stepping closer. You could have taken this information and disappeared, sold it to my enemies, used it to blackmail me. But you came straight here and told me. He stopped right in front of her. That is why I believe you. Olivia looked at him, and in that moment she saw something she had never seen before. Trust. Real trust. This is not coincidence, is it? She asked softly. Me finding this job, Emma's disease, my parents' research. No, Damien said, shaking his head. Not coincidence. Then what is it? He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something like hope inside those storm-gray eyes. A second chance. For both of us. They stood there in the dark room, two broken souls trying to find their way back into one shape. I will destroy Kozlov, Damien said, his voice like steel, and expose Helix, burn them all down. And I will finish my parents' research, Olivia said. Find scientists we can trust. Cure Emma completely. Together. Damien stepped closer, so close she could feel the warmth of him. After this is over, he said, his voice lowering, I will walk away. The work, the empire, all of it. For Emma. He lifted his hand, tipped her chin up, forcing her to meet his gaze. And for you, if you will have me. Olivia did not answer with words. She placed her hand on his chest, felt the strong heartbeat under the fabric of his shirt, then rose onto her toes and kissed him. This kiss was different from the last. Not two people searching for comfort in the dark, two warriors before battle, full of resolve, full of promise, full of strength. When they parted, Olivia looked straight into Damien's eyes. Then let's finish this, she said. For our family, the war was coming. And this time, they were ready. They had 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare for war. The Thornton estate became a military base in that time. Damien summoned his most loyal men, the ones who had followed him since the earliest days on the streets of Brooklyn, the ones who had bled for him and were ready to bleed again. They met behind closed doors in the basement, maps and diagrams spread across the table, guns and ammunition stacked in the corner like they were preparing for the end of the world. Marcus was the one gathering intelligence. He had spies everywhere, eyes and ears planted inside Kozlov's territory for years. Piece by piece, the picture came together. Weak points were identified, routes were redrawn. He is hiding in the warehouse compound in Red Hook, Marcus reported, pointing to a map of Brooklyn on the table. Heavy security, at least 30 gunmen, cameras everywhere, a safe room on the top floor. Damien studied the map, his gray eyes cold as steel. Then we hit fast and hard. No survivors. While Damien prepared for blood, Olivia prepared for life. She contacted Isabel every day through the secure phone Damien provided. Her aunt had connected with a group of trustworthy scientists, people who had worked with Olivia's parents 20 years earlier and still believed in their dream. They were willing to continue the research if they had the original material. Every night, after Emma fell asleep, Olivia sat alone in her room with her father's brown leather notebook. She read page after page, copied detail after detail, forcing herself to wrestle with formulas beyond her limited nursing knowledge. Much of it was too complex for her to fully understand. But she kept reading, kept learning, kept trying to reach the father she had never truly known. One night, she found something that made her heart stop. Her father's notes in the final pages, written in a rush, as if he knew time was running out. Research 90% complete, only clinical testing needed. This method can save thousands of children. If the research succeeded, Emma would not need the pacer anymore. Not ever again. The night before the attack, Damien found Olivia in Emma's room. She was sitting beside the crib, singing a lullaby the way Nana Rosa used to sing to her. Her voice was soft and trembling, full of love. Emma was asleep, her smooth black hair spread across the pillow, her pink lips slightly parted, her tiny chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm guided by the pacer. Damien stood in the doorway, silent, unwilling to break the moment. "She looks like a real family," Marcus said behind him, his voice quiet and carrying a rare warmth. Damien did not turn. "Yes, they are my family." He stepped into the room and sat down beside Olivia. She stopped singing and turned to look at him. In the pale yellow nightlight, she saw something she had never seen in Damien Thornton's eyes before. Fear. "After tomorrow," he said, his voice low and rough. "If I do not come back." "Do not," Olivia cut in, her voice hardening. "I need to say this," Damien said, taking her hand and squeezing tight. "If I do not come back, take Emma away. Take her far away. Give her a normal life, a life she deserves. You will come back. Promise me." Olivia looked into his eyes and saw fear braided with love. "I promise," she said, "but you will come back. Because I am not planning to raise this child alone." Damien gave a small smile, a rare one that softened the hard lines of his face. "When this is over," he said, "serious, marry me." Olivia went still, unable to breathe. She looked at him, certain she had heard wrong. "I know this is insane," Damien continued, his gray eyes never leaving hers. "I know we have only known each other for a few weeks, but I have never been more certain of anything than I am right now." Olivia could not speak. Her throat tightened. Her heart beat wildly. "Ask me again when you come back," she finally whispered. "I will give you my answer." They held each other in Emma's room, their bodies pressed close, searching for warmth and strength in one another. Outside the window, the line of black vehicles was already waiting. Weapons were loaded. Men were ready to die. In a few hours, either Kozlov would die, or Damien would die. There was no middle ground. They hit the warehouse compound at 4 a.m, when the darkness was at its thickest. Red Hook, Brooklyn. An abandoned industrial zone of rusted warehouses and rotting piers. The perfect place to hide. The perfect place to die. Damien's line of black vehicles stopped 200 meters from the target. Engines off, headlights out. They dissolved into the night like ghosts. 40 of Damien's men against 30 of Kozlov's gunmen. Cold numbers. Human lives that would be counted in blood before the sun came up. Damien stepped out of the vehicle, his gray eyes sweeping the warehouse complex ahead. A bulletproof vest hugged his chest. 2 pistols rode at his hips. A dagger sat in the sheath inside his boot. He was not wearing a suit tonight. Tonight was not for negotiating. Tonight was for killing. "Alpha team, front entrance," he ordered, his voice cold and sharp as a blade. "Beta team, wrap around through the loading door. Marcus, you take Gamma up to the roof. Leave no one standing." Marcus gave a tight nod. "Understood, boss. Move." The night exploded. The first gunshot tore through the silence like thunder, and then the rest followed, one after another, a chain reaction of fire and noise. Muzzle flashes lit the dark, revealing men moving, falling, dying. Screams ricocheted off cold concrete walls, bullets tearing into flesh, bones cracking, a final breath leaving a body for the last time. Damien led the main assault straight into the front entrance of the largest warehouse. He moved like death in the dark, fast, precise, no wasted motion. Every round he fired found its mark. Every enemy who stepped into his sights went down. A gunman sprang from behind a cargo crate and opened fire at Damien. Damien rolled aside, dodging the spray by inches, then fired back. 2 shots, one in the chest, one in the head. The gunman collapsed. "This is for threatening my daughter," Damien whispered, stepping over the body without looking down. Another man appeared, bigger, quicker. He hit Damien in the shoulder, the bullet slamming into the vest, pain like a punch from a steel fist. Damien snarled, did not slow, and fired 3 times in a row. The gunman fell, eyes wide, staring up at the ceiling. "And this is for Olivia's parents," Damien said, his voice cold as ice. Blood, gun smoke, screaming, hell on earth. Damien's men pushed deeper into the warehouse, breaking Kozlov's defenses line by line. The Russian boss's soldiers dropped like autumn leaves, but they did not fall without taking someone with them. 8 of Damien's men went down in the first minutes. 8 lives, 8 families that would never be whole again. Damien had no time to mourn. He would mourn later, if he lived. They surged into the main structure, a 3-story warehouse with rusted iron stairs and dim corridors. Enemies were everywhere, around every corner, on every stair, in every room. Damien and his men fought for every meter, every centimeter, paying in blood for each step forward. "Boss," Marcus shouted into the radio, his voice urgent. "Kozlov is not on the ground floor. He is on the top level. Safe room." Damien ground his teeth. "Then we go up." They climbed one floor at a time, fighting for every step. The iron staircase rang with pounding feet and gunfire. First floor, second floor. Each level was a battle. Each corridor was a minefield. Damien took 2 more hits, a graze across his thigh, a cut along his arm from flying glass. He did not stop. He could not stop. At last, they reached the top floor. A steel door at least 15 centimeters thick blocked their path. Locked from the inside, Kozlov's safe room, where he was hiding like a rat in a hole. "Blow it," Damien ordered. One of his men stepped forward and set explosives around the doorframe. Everyone backed off and found cover. 3, 2, 1. The blast shook the building. The steel door ripped free and slammed into the opposite wall with a deafening crash. Smoke and dust filled the air. Damien charged in first, gun raised, ready to fire. And he saw Kozlov. The man sat behind a large oak desk, as if he were in an office, instead of the middle of a war. 50 years old, short-cut gray hair, a thick beard, icy blue eyes. He wore a black suit, a white shirt, a red tie, as if he were dressed for a party. A gun rested in his hand, but he did not lift it. He simply sat there and smiled. "Welcome, Thornton," he said, his voice carrying the unmistakable edge of a Russian accent. "I have been waiting for you." 2 predators. 1 room. Only one could walk out. Damien stood in the doorway, his gun aimed straight at Kozlov, his finger set on the trigger, ready to squeeze. Smoke from the blast still drifted in the air, the stench of gunpowder and blood blended into that familiar smell of death. Outside the room, the gunfire had thinned. The battle was almost over. Only one final thing remained. Kozlov sat there, calm as if he were hosting a tea party. His blue eyes were as cold as a venomous snake's, not a trace of fear inside them. He had seen death too many times to be afraid of it now. "You came all this way for what?" he asked, his tone mocking. "For a baby, for a woman." "For my family," Damien answered, his voice like steel. "Something you will never understand." Kozlov laughed, the sound echoing in the room like a crow's cry. "Family. You are a killer, Thornton, just like me. Do not pretend you are noble." Damien did not answer. He only stood there, gun steady, waiting. "Do you know what the funniest part is?" Kozlov said, tilting his head, that poisonous smile spreading. "Your nanny. Her parents almost ruined everything." Damien went still. His finger tightened on the trigger. 20 years ago, Helix paid me $50 million to make them disappear," Kozlov went on, speaking as if he were telling a joke. "The easiest money I ever made. 2 naive scientists who thought they could change the world." He gave a contemptuous snort. "The world does not want to be changed." "You admit it?" Damien asked, his voice shaking with restrained fury. "Of course," Kozlov shrugged. "They are dead. What does it matter now? And now their daughter is raising your child." How poetic. Damien clenched his jaw until it ached. Every cell in his body screamed to pull the trigger. But he needed more. He needed the whole truth. "But there is something you do not know, Thornton," Kozlov said, rising slowly. He still held his gun, but he did not lift it yet. "Helix did not only want that research buried. They wanted it for themselves." "What are you saying?" "That cure." "It works," Kozlov said, stepping to the side, his eyes never leaving Damien. "They have been sitting on it for 20 years, waiting for the right moment to make billions. Your daughter's condition. They could have cured it before she was even born. But where is the profit in that?" Damien felt his blood boil. Emma, his little girl, she had suffered. She had nearly died. She had been forced into a pacer, maybe for life. All for money. "You let children suffer for profit," he roared. "Welcome to the real world," Kozlov smiled, and he raised his gun. 2 shots cracked almost at the same time. Kozlov fired first, but the bullet tore past Damien's shoulder and buried itself in the wall behind him. Damien's shot was cleaner. It punched through Kozlov's right shoulder. Kozlov staggered. The gun slipped from his hand, but Kozlov did not fall. He snarled like an animal, yanked a dagger from inside his suit, and charged. Their bodies collided with brutal force. Damien did not have time for a second shot. Kozlov drove him down to the concrete floor. They grappled, rolling on the cold ground, each man fighting for control. Kozlov stabbed downward. Damien blocked with his arm, but not fully. The blade sank into Damien's side, pain flaring like fire. Damien roared, seized Kozlov's wrist with his free hand, and twisted hard. A dry crack of bone. Kozlov screamed. The knife clattered away. Damien did not stop. He punched Kozlov in the face. Once, twice, 3 times. Blood sprayed. Kozlov's nose broke. Teeth flew. But Damien kept hitting, pouring out 20 years of Olivia's stolen life, pouring out his terror of losing Emma, pouring out his disgust for a man who let children die for money. At last Damien stopped, breathing hard, his fist soaked in blood. Kozlov lay beneath him, face ruined, but still breathing, still smiling. Damien picked up his gun and aimed it at Kozlov's head. "Last words?" Damien asked. Kozlov grinned through blood and shattered teeth. "Kill me. Someone else will replace me. Helix will never stop. Then I will kill them all. You think you are different from me?" Kozlov spat blood. "You are not. You are just a—" The gunshot cut him off. The bullet went through Kozlov's head and ended the unfinished sentence. His cold blue eyes stared at the ceiling, then slowly emptied of light. Viktor Kozlov, the man who murdered Olivia's parents, the man who threatened Emma, was finally dead. Damien stood, unsteady, one hand pressed to the stab wound in his side, blood running down and soaking his shirt. He moved to Kozlov's desk, where a laptop sat open. Emails, contracts, transaction lists with Helix, proof of every crime. Damien pulled a flash drive from his pocket, plugged it in, and began downloading. Marcus burst into the room. "Boss, we have to go. The police are coming." "Not finished," Damien said, eyes locked on the screen. The progress bar crawled forward. 80%, 90%, complete. He yanked the flash drive out and shoved it into his pocket. "Send it all to the FBI, and to every newspaper in the country." They left the warehouse as dawn began to rise over the Brooklyn horizon. Behind them, Kozlov's body lay among the bodies of his men. Ahead of them, police sirens drew closer. Damien stepped outside. The first sunlight of the new day hit his face. Kozlov was dead. Helix would fall. It was over. Then his knees buckled beside the vehicle, blood from the stab wound spreading and turning his shirt red. The war had ended, but the price still had not been paid. He almost died on the operating table. Twice. Marcus got Damien to the private hospital right after they left the Red Hook warehouse compound. Severe blood loss. The stab wound in his side had missed his liver by mere millimeters. The doctor said if they had arrived 10 minutes later, there would have been nothing they could do. During the 6-hour surgery, Damien's heart stopped 2 times. 2 times the medical team had to shock him, dragging him back from the edge of death. Olivia sat in the waiting room, Emma in her arms, and she prayed for the first time in 20 years. She did not know who she was praying to. The god Nana Rosa believed in, the universe, any power willing to listen. She only knew she could not lose him. Not now, not after everything they had survived. Isabel arrived in the afternoon, sat beside Olivia, and took her hand. "He is strong," her aunt said softly. "He will make it." "He has to," Olivia whispered, eyes swollen from crying and lack of sleep. "I have not even said yes yet." In the waiting room, a television mounted high on the wall played the news. Olivia was not paying attention until she heard 2 words that made her heart stop. Helix Pharmaceuticals. She lifted her head and stared at the screen, and the headlines crawled past like something she could not quite believe. Breaking news. The chief executive officer of Helix Pharmaceuticals has been arrested. A massive corruption scandal has been exposed. Footage showed the Helix headquarters with dozens of FBI vehicles outside, executives in handcuffs being led away, thousands of documents seized. Evidence sent by an anonymous source to the FBI and major media outlets has revealed 20 years of crimes by this pharmaceutical corporation, the anchor said, including the suppression of medical research that could have saved thousands of children and involvement in at least 3 murders of scientists. Among the confirmed victims are Dr. Daniel Reyes and Dr. Maria Reyes, 2 geneticists killed in a staged car accident 20 years ago. Tears spilled down Olivia's face. She clutched Emma closer, shoulders shaking with sobs she could not hold back. "They know," she whispered. "Now everyone knows what happened to my parents." Isabel wrapped her arms around her, and they cried together, for the people they lost, for justice finally served, for 20 years of silence and fear, finally brought to an end. 3 days later, Damien opened his eyes. Olivia sat beside the bed, Emma asleep in her arms. She had not left the hospital since they brought him in, eating in the cafeteria, sleeping on the waiting room sofa, waiting. "Hey!" Damien's voice rasped, weak, but it was the most beautiful sound Olivia had ever heard. "Hey yourself," she said, smiling and crying at the same time, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Did we win?" "We won," Olivia said, taking his hand and squeezing tight. "Kozlov is dead. Helix is falling apart. The research. Safe," Olivia said. "Isabel is working with a team of scientists. They think they can finish it within 2 years." Damien closed his eyes and let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for a lifetime. When he opened them again, something shone in his gray gaze that Olivia had never seen before. "Peace. I meant what I said," he told her, his voice weak but certain. "I am done. No more blood. No more darkness." He had begun transferring his empire before the attack. The legal holdings would be sold to trustworthy partners. The illegal parts would be dismantled. Marcus would help manage the transition. "It is over, Olivia," Damien said. "We are free." Olivia looked at him, her heart beating too fast. "So about the question I asked you," he began, a spark of mischief flashing through his exhaustion. Olivia laughed through her tears. "The answer is yes." She leaned down and kissed him, gentle and careful, afraid of hurting him. But Damien lifted his hand, pulled her closer, and kissed her like she was air and he was drowning. A kiss full of relief, full of hope, full of new beginnings. Emma chose that moment to wake up, babbling and reaching her tiny arms toward Damien. "Someone wants to see her father," Olivia said with a smile, setting the baby into Damien's arms. He held his daughter even though it hurt, even though his body was still weak. He held Emma like she was the whole world, because to him, she was. 3 people, a real family now, not bound by blood, but by love, by pain, by sacrifice. The darkness was finally behind them, and the light was calling. 3 years later, Dr. Olivia Thornton stood before the world. The Grand Hall of the New York International Convention Center was packed. Hundreds of physicians, scientists, and reporters from across the globe had gathered for what the medical community was calling the breakthrough of the decade. A massive banner hung above the stage, reading, "Pediatric Research Foundation, Gene Therapy Breakthrough for CCHS." Stage lights blazed. Cameras from dozens of networks streamed live. Millions of people around the world were watching. Olivia stepped up to the podium, poised and radiant in an elegant white suit. She was no longer the trembling nanny who had once stood outside the gates of the Thornton estate 4 years earlier. She had completed her medical doctorate. She had led the research team that finished the work her parents left behind. She had become the woman Nana Rosa always believed she could be. 3 years ago, Olivia began, her voice carrying through the hall. "I held a baby in my arms who was dying. Her body had forgotten how to breathe." Absolute silence filled the room, every eye fixed on her. Today, that little girl is running and laughing and sleeping through the night without a single machine. Olivia smiled, her voice quivering slightly with emotion. "The treatment I present today will bring that gift to every child in the world living with CCHS." Applause surged, but Olivia lifted a hand and the room fell quiet again. "This research belongs to everyone, but I want to dedicate it to the people who made it real," she said, drawing a deep breath as she held back the wave rising in her chest. "To my parents, Dr. Daniel and Dr. Maria Reyes, who gave their lives for this dream. 23 years ago, they began this work believing that no child should die because a body forgets how to breathe. They were murdered for that belief. But today, their dream is real." Her voice tightened, but she did not stop. "To Nana Rosa, who taught me healing begins in the heart. She saved my life in the truest sense, and she gave me the knowledge to save others. To my husband, who fought through darkness to bring light to our family. Without him, I would not be standing here today. And to my daughter, Emma, who showed me miracles are real." The hall rose to its feet. Applause thundered. Olivia looked down at the front row where Isabel sat, tears shining, clapping until her hands turned red. Her aunt had worked beside her for 3 years, tireless and unshaken, until the research was finally complete. In the wings, Damien stood holding Emma. He no longer wore the dark black suits of his old life. Today he wore a navy suit and a white shirt, no tie. His gray eyes were bright with pride as he watched his wife on stage. Emma was 4 now, long black hair brushing her shoulders, gray eyes glittering like her father's, a wide grin as if she had never known suffering at all. She did not need the pacer anymore. The gene therapy had cured her completely 6 months earlier, the first case in the clinical trial, living proof that the research worked. "Mommy." Emma suddenly squirmed free of Damien's arms and ran onto the stage on her tiny legs. The audience laughed, and the applause grew even louder. Olivia dropped to her knees, caught her daughter, and held her tight, tears of joy slipping down her cheeks. Damien stepped onto the stage, wrapped both of them in his arms, and in that moment, millions of people around the world watched the image of a perfect family no one ever believed could exist. Damien was now the chief executive officer of the Thornton Foundation for Children, the largest charity in the United States dedicated to supporting children with life-threatening illnesses. No more dark empire, no more blood and guns, only light. Marcus was the head of security for the foundation, still loyal, still guarding the Thornton family the way he always had. A reporter raised a hand. "Dr. Thornton, what is your next plan?" Olivia glanced at Damien and smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. "You could say," she answered, her hand drifting to her stomach without thinking. "Our family is about to welcome a new member." Damien stared at her, stunned, then understanding dawned, and his gray eyes lit up like sunlight. He pulled her closer and kissed her forehead in front of the cameras and the millions watching. Some miracles come only once, some come twice, and some keep coming, as long as you keep believing. Morning sunlight turned the entire garden gold. 6 months after the medical conference, life for the Thornton family had changed completely. They left the Manhattan estate, those walls packed with painful memories, and moved to a warm, welcoming home in Connecticut, where a wide garden stretched out with lush green lawns and towering old oak trees casting cool shade. This was their new home. A home without darkness. A home with only love. Olivia sat on a wooden chair in the garden, one hand resting on her 6-month pregnant belly, feeling the gentle kicks of the tiny life growing inside her. Warm sunlight poured over her. A light breeze carried the scent of roses and freshly cut grass, and in front of her was the most beautiful sight in the world. Damien was playing tag with Emma on the lawn. He, the man who had once been the terror of the New York underworld, was now running clumsily after his 4-year-old daughter, pretending he could not catch her. Emma shrieked with laughter, black hair flying in the wind, tiny legs flashing across the grass. "Daddy, catch me!" Emma shouted, her clear laughter ringing through the garden. Damien lunged, caught her, and the two of them tumbled onto the lawn. He pretended to be defeated, lying on his back with Emma sitting on his stomach, declaring victory with both hands raised high. Olivia watched them, smiling, and suddenly tears rose to her eyes. She thought about her journey. She thought about the 27-year-old woman standing on the edge of a bridge in Albuquerque, ready to jump into black water, ready to end everything. That woman had lost everything. She had nothing left to live for. She had no reason left to breathe. And now she was here, in a sunlit garden, with a husband who loved her, with a healthy daughter, with a baby soon to be born. She had everything she had never dared to dream for. Nana Rosa had been right. The body knows how to heal itself, and so does the soul. Damien carried Emma over to her. Both of them were smeared with grass and dirt, but grinning from ear to ear. "Mommy, when is the baby coming?" Emma asked, climbing up beside her mother and touching Olivia's belly with wide-eyed curiosity. 3 more months, sweetheart," Olivia said, stroking her hair. "Can I name the baby?" Damien sat down on Olivia's other side and looked at their daughter with gentle love. "What name do you want?" Emma thought for a moment, her face serious, as if deciding something very important. Then she looked up, gray eyes bright. "Daniel, like Grandpa in heaven." Olivia could not hold back her tears. She pulled her daughter into her arms and held her tight, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Perfect, sweetheart. That is the perfect name." Emma ran off to play with the family's new golden retriever, leaving Damien and Olivia sitting together in the early sun. He took his wife's hand, their fingers weaving together, quiet, peaceful. "Do you ever think about it?" Damien asked softly. "About what would have happened if you had not taken that job?" Olivia looked at him and smiled. "Sometimes. But then I remember what Nana Rosa used to say." "What did she say?" "There are no coincidences. Only paths we have not understood yet." Damien nodded and pulled her into his arms. She was a wise woman. Olivia lifted her eyes to the blue sky, where white clouds drifted slowly, and she whispered, "Thank you, Nana. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. I found them. The ones who needed me most. And they needed me the way I needed them." Damien kissed her forehead. "I love you. I love you too. I love all 3 of you," she said, looking at Emma running across the grass, looking down at her belly, then looking at the man beside her. "Family hug," Emma suddenly shouted, racing back and crashing into her parents' arms. The three of them held each other in the sun-soaked garden, their laughter mixing with the wind, the birdsong, the rustle of leaves. Darkness is real. Fear is real. Pain is real. But love is real too. Hope is real too. Healing is real too. And morning is real. Morning always comes. Olivia and Damien's story teaches us that no matter how far life pushes us into the darkest abyss, no matter how sharply pain tears at the heart, there is always light waiting at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes the most broken people are the ones who can love the deepest, because they understand the true value of being healed. Sometimes fate leads us to places we never expected, to people we never thought we could love, only for us to realize that was where we belonged all along. If this story makes you believe in second chances, please take a second to hit the like button and share this video with someone who needs hope right now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss the emotional stories we bring you every day. We would love to know how this story touched your heart. Have you ever lived through nights that felt like there was no way out? Do you believe morning always comes after every long night? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We always want to hear the stories that come from deep inside your hearts. Thank you for walking with us on this journey. We wish you and your family strong health, a life full of joy and peace every day. Remember, no matter how dark the night becomes, morning always comes. Goodbye, and we will see you in the next video.